Sexual violence remains one of the issues that are still affecting young women and girls in our communities. And Uganda, of course, Ugandan government has recognized it as one of the issues, big issues that are affecting these people in urban, in rural. But then sometimes we ask ourselves how we can help these people who are being tortured psychologically, emotionally, mentally. And there's this bill, that sexual offense bill, that was introduced in 2015 and tabled last year, I think, in Parliament. And then today we want us at least to be looking at some of the issues that really this bill is going to be tackling and how we can advocate for it, maybe the Parliament passes it and how we can see that it is implemented and the abusers are brought to books, are really punished according to the bill. But before we dive into the discussions, of course, I want you to introduce to the people who watch this show, people who say that the show is on, who give us feedback, who say, you know what, Frank, you can now talk about this. Yeah, what you do, what you're passionate about, your hobbies, sometimes even what in your free time, what you do in your free time. So that maybe someone who is there has been maybe wasting his or her free time now to come here from you.
Thank you so much. I'm called Nivatiti, but most people call me Titi. I work with Action Aid Uganda as the manager of Women Access to Social Justice. And I think for me, my passion is to support women access social, economic, and legal justice. So it's a bigger component for me. In my life, I feel very good when I support a woman to seek legal redress, to seek economic justice, to improve their livelihoods, to put a smile to their face. Because at the end of the day, life should be putting a smile to anyone's face. This is what should be aimed at. And so I'm a human rights advocate, and I advocate for women's rights at all levels, from the community level, national level, regional and international level. And so I was part of the committee comprising of civil society, government, and other actors that enacted the Equal Opportunities Act, and that led to the establishment of the Equal Opportunities Commission. So that means equality is what I feel very passionate about. Equality, justice, these are very critical issues for us, and for me personally. And during my free time, I listen to music. I love to dance.
Hip hop or gospel?
Hip hop can do for me African music. Name it. The good thing is should be bringing happiness and satisfaction to me. But I also do reading, because you find that as you do reading, you enlighten yourself on what is happening in the country, what's happening within the communities you want to represent, so that you represent these people with a very informed kind of point of view. And so I do all that, but I also love interacting with children. Yeah, so they're free-spirited, they share what they feel like, and so for me that makes my life a bit complete. But I also love to support the very indigent people. For instance, there's some people that are ignored in communities, like the very disabled people. Some people hide them in their houses and they never want to talk to them. But for me, when I get to learn of such a family, I interact with them. By the time you know they're supporting such a person, which changes their life. First of all, changing their mindset to look at everyone in a very positive way. So that aside, back to business, my work at Action Aid, I usually advocate for addressing issues of sexual gender-based violence. And what do you mean by sexual gender-based violence? The issues of rape, defilement, incest, among them. There are quite many. Some are a bit nasty, you don't want to go through them. Can take you some psychological journey to appreciate the different forms of sexual violence, but there are many. So we operate, Action Aid through funding from DFID, we operate 10 women protection centers. And here in YSA we have one. We have others in different parts of the region, Bulu, Amoru, Lira, Kapchora, Kachak, very deep down there. So reaching out to those vulnerable women and girls to seek justice is very important. And so for me, the issue of sexual violence is quite broad because it goes as deep as conducting female genital mutilation in some communities like in the eastern region. And this has an impact on a girl and a woman. So these are critical issues we advocate for.
Because of the advocacy and sensitization, even surveying people now.
Yes. We work with the community.
Now it has at least reduced.
It's a yes and no. Because initially, during the advocacy work we've done over years, for the past, I say 3 years, it had reduced. But with last year, there was a very huge incident that obstructed everyone in the community because we didn't expect that that would happen again. Where there was an insurgency of FGM, around 20 girls were cut. And so, working with the communities, you identify new strategies to end the practice. So you find that the advocacy around the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act, which was passed in 2016 as a law, everyone is aware. So we thought people had changed and they will not do the practice.
I heard that now they no longer call people that now this is going to happen. Now they do it in their houses.
Yes. Some do it while giving birth, the traditional birth attendants. Some go as far as deep down in the caves to undertake the practice. Others do cross-border. For instance, during the Christmas holiday, 2019, you find that at cross-border, that is in Kenya, people were doing FGM, yet they have the existing legal framework. So this said we had to continue engaging with the communities, cultural, religious leaders, political leaders, the police, to ensure that the practice doesn't happen. So the issue is you need to continue with the communities, sensitization, awareness on the plight of women and girls, so that this practice ends. Because you find that in that community, in the eastern region, the issues of early marriages, issues of FGM in anticipation of marriage,
and of course the early marriage also violates the...
Exactly. So those are issues that are happening. And for us, what we do at the Women Protection Centers, we provide services to the vulnerable women. And so, being part of the bigger coalition and the women's movement in Uganda, we have a coalition called the Domestic Violence Coalition, where we advocate for different issues. And among them, we champion the Domestic Violence Act, which was passed. And we also have a framework. So that addresses one component. But at the moment, working with the members of parliament, that is Honorable Monica Amadi, in 2015, she tabled a very important bill, that is the Sexual Offences Bill in 2015, to address the pertinent issues that were not addressed in the Penal Code. Yeah? You find that the Penal Code talks about rape, defilement, but it doesn't explicitly go ahead to identify the critical issues of concern. Among them, it doesn't focus on children. But it's very important.
Yeah, because at least this bill talks about sex, children, sex abuse.
Actually, the terminologies are changing. When you talk about child prostitution, it's like you're consenting to give away this child to prostitution. But the terminology should be commercial sexual exploitation. That is a transformative language that needs to be adopted. And so that means even the bill needs to change it somewhat. But what is important is that the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda talks about children's rights. You have the Children's Act as well, which sets the age of 18. And so the Penal Code and other legal frameworks have left out the issue of sexual exploitation for children. And so the 2015 bill was tabled for Parliament, and it was deliberated upon. There was consultations by different actors, but along the way there were concerns. They felt like they were not right. That's why it took long to pass that legal framework. And among the issue there, critical at that point, was the issue of the death penalty. Because the recommendation was, in case someone undertakes or does rape or defilement, the sentence should be the death sentence. But remember, the Constitution also talks about someone's right to life. Okay, so there was that discussion, conversation across the country, whereby it was also taken back for further review and analysis. So you find that the penalties were changed, and so issues of the death penalty were left out. So I think the bill introduces critical issues. Among them is sex tourism. Yeah, you find that some people bring children from wherever. I give an example of Karamoja, to different spaces, and they bring pedophiles to look at them, to use them, and all that. So the bill is very clear on that, and it provides a penalty in case someone is found doing this. But it also provides for issues of sexual harassment, yeah, which was not the case. And so you find that Uganda as a country have very progressive laws. We have policy, the sexual harassment policy in some institutions that defines rape and defilement, but implementation, issues of evidence collection from the community, from the police, preservation of evidence so that it's usable in court remains a big challenge. And you find that women and girls in the communities there, like, let me give an example in Buko, if you've heard about that district in this country. You find that women walk a long distance even to access the nearest health center. And so what does this mean to say that this legal framework will support this woman? It requires improved service delivery. For instance, the police needs to be equipped. The health centers that are supposed to provide first aid services need to be fully equipped. But you find that someone has to walk a long distance, but even the emergency pills for HIV and AIDS will not be available. So resourcing remains a very big challenge in this country, and it requires for greater investment by the government to ensure that we have resources for these people. So moving forward, this the bill, the sexual offences bill, was tabled. I think it is part of the cause list. It's on the list.
Yeah, it's on the list. Yeah.
Yes, and so it's going to be presented. I think by end of this month. Yeah. So it's going to be presented for deliberation by members of parliament. And so you'll find that you have greater allies from members of parliament, the male, the female, working with the Uganda Men Parliamentary Association to ensure that we pass this into law. You find that it addresses critical issues that are being left out, issues of sex tourism, issues of sexual harassment, and this resonates to the international commitments that the country has made over time to address issues of ending sexual harassment. You hear cases in the institutions of learning and communities where women and girls are sexually harassed, but the perpetrators are laid free. So passing this bill into law will really support the vulnerable women and girls, at least to have one catch five, whereby in case a perpetrator is arrested, there's a legal provision that will cater for that kind of case, which is not the case in other legal frameworks. You give an example, simple defilement, some clauses were left out in the other legislations. So this policy, this bill will ably address some of the issues that were left out. And so I think it will be prudent for members of parliament to really consider the sexual offences bill, and among other legal frameworks, we have the Employment Act Amendment. We have the legal aid service provision. These are critical to support the vulnerable women and girls to get to justice. And so, at a later point, we would request the President to assent to these very important laws, because in a way they are transforming society, they are addressing the existing injustices in the communities, as well as advancing development at a large scale.
Yeah, thank you, Titi, for that background and introduction of the bill. So now, my next question would be, what should people do in the community to see that this bill is passed and implemented? Yeah, because, okay, it is going to be passed, but it will take time, of course. Now, but at the end of the month, they are going to talk about it. The list, they're going to talk about it, maybe extended. So what is now the role of the people, the community people that are seeing these issues that are really affecting them? What is their role right now?
I think the community members, most of the women and girls, have a critical role to play at this point in time where our leaders are going into elections. So this Sexual Offences Bill 2019 should be a yardstick to engage your leader, your member of parliament.
Take the opportunity.
Yes, to ask them, what are you doing about this? Because in communities that are really affected by sexual harassment, rape, defilement, we find that, I give an example in the Eastern region, issues of early child marriage are on the rise. Yeah? People are giving away their children as young as 10 in exchange of gifts. But if this legal framework, you engage with your leader, your member of parliament, and tell them, I want you to pass this legal framework before I vote you into power, it becomes easier for the member of parliament to go and push for the same when it's presented before parliament, And so this remains very pertinent. But also engaging the district leadership to resource the existing health centers, the improved service delivery. You find that at community level, women and girls don't even know where to go for starters. They don't know how to preserve evidence, where to report, and all that.
Because now, okay, you've talked about where to go and failure to present the evidence. And even in the bill, it is where like falsely sexual allegations. So I wanted you at least talk about that part, since you say that they've failed, maybe they've not failed, but maybe the society, maybe the police, or maybe someone who's concerned, they fail to understand this person's situation and they think it is false allegations. So how can we go about this that makes sure that really the police believes in this person, that this thing happened, instead of calling it a false sexual allegation?
I think at that point of allegation is that it's another entity to prove that, But once a survivor, let me say, someone has survived rape or defilement, the basic thing someone is supposed to do, not to disregard their information, but you need to support them. First, they need psychological support. They need medical support to prevent against certain diseases like HIV and AIDS, STDs, and all that. So the first basic thing to do is to get the basic services, like preventing HIV and AIDS. No normal person would request for going through that treatment if they've not gone through rape or defilement. So I think people need to stop trivializing rape, defilement, sexual harassment. Some are trying to make it seem like it's comic, but it's a serious challenge because it affects a woman psychologically.
That's because when you look at the research, I think even before we ended the year, there's some girl who came out and said that Denzel, I don't know if you read that story, that Denzel raped her sometime back, but she looked for the ways in how she can disclose the public and maybe the police, and she failed, and maybe she found out that maybe the social media could be a safe platform for her to open up and talk about it. But when she talked about it, of course she got the attack, people attacked, like, no, you're lying, how come for 5 years you've not talked about police? So how can we believe you? So like that. So do you think that the internet could be also one of the platforms that people could use and report, or people should go direct to the police? But of course, our system, people no longer trust the police system. So, and then they opt for internet. Like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So do you think that the internet is one of the ways that these people are abused, or maybe are raped, the victims to really use the internet?
I think with the trends, usually use of social media, different platforms are coming up. And there are two sides to the issue of use of social media. It's both positive and negative. But I'll not dwell much on the positives, because at least it's to relieve someone, maybe to share their experience and all that. But the issue next would be what next after sharing. Are you going to get therapy? Are you going to get someone to interact with on a personal basis to give you more counseling? Or others will also share their other versions to what you've shared, which at times might not be good. And yet, if maybe it's a reporting system where someone says, I've gone through this and they need support, it becomes easier to refer that person, for instance, the relevant service providers. For instance, ActionAid provides shelter services. In case a victim is reporting on social media, they say, I need support, medical, psychosocial, then referring to that other facility will be very helpful, because the person will get support. And you find that if someone goes through rape or defilement, the psychosocial support they need is quite a journey. It's not a one-off, 2 days and all that. So you find that the media will be very helpful, maybe in reporting an incident, but it will not be fully a mechanism to provide treatment. Yeah? But some generational interventions are coming up, where people are overtly interacting on WhatsApp, on email and other forms of media. So we're trying it out, but we need to look at the pros and cons to this kind of engagement. Yeah.
Thank you for the highlights. Now, as we conclude, maybe you could tell us recommendations, like maybe some of the recommendations that for you, and you've been in communities, you've been having dialogue, you've had stories, people have told you how you feel, and you know the trauma that maybe this person is going through, what she went through. It is a lot when someone says there was a fight, there was a rape, so it is a lot that's going on. So what would be your like 2 or 3 recommendations that you would give?
I think what is very critical is that the government of Uganda should expedite the process of enacting the Sexual Offences Bill 2019 into law, so that it doesn't exceed beyond maybe February or March, the first quarter 2020. So that this would be a record document to prosecute perpetrators. And so I call upon members of parliament to prioritize this bill. But continued sensitization of community members remains very critical. You realize that in our communities there is an increasing number of cases of incest, where family members or guardians or custodians of certain people are instead raping, defiling them. And so it's important that some people speak out to get justice. You find that it's not easy to break that cycle of declaring to the family members what is going through. But once you break the cycle, it becomes easier. We've seen some young people break this cycle, whereby very highly placed parents sexually use their children, their daughters, they defile them, they rape them, and they speak out. But the repercussions are not that easy, because they ask you either you give in for sex or you don't get school fees. So the child or the woman will have to choose either not to go to school or to find elsewhere to live, which is a very controversial kind of scenario, which requires a lot of support, psychological support, to get away from this vicious cycle of rape or defilement. So working with existing community structures to provide alternatives for the community members, to find alternative shelter for this person remains important. And with the increasing incidence of rape in the country, I think we need to ensure that everyone's safe in their country. Yeah, this is very important. Case in point was yesterday. I saw a religious leader who made a young lady pregnant, and he was denying it. And so when they told the person to go for DNA test, he said, "No, don't. That is my child." So he accepted and said he's going to provide support. So the issue is, must you go to that level? Yeah? And then he's saying the next day I'm going to marry. So there's that contradiction.
From that is that there are people who have power, who have authority sometimes, and they commit these crimes. So, and of course people fear to talk about them, and there is a lot. When you talk about this person, maybe your life is in danger, and of course they call them the known. They have power, they have money, they can do anything. So in that situation, when really a girl finds herself in that, where of course you are there to really provide the shelter, but of course to open up and say this is the person. But remember, the person has power, money, authority, he can do it. So in that,
I think it's very important for everyone to appreciate that no one is above the law. Okay? Once the law is met, no one could be beyond or above the law. For instance, if someone has raped a woman, someone has defiled, they must be prosecuted. The challenge that remains is, how do we support this victim, or how do we work with the state to ensure that we bring the evidence, preserve the evidence from police level, from the community. How can the community preserve the evidence so that the woman doesn't go and wash away the clothes, or the girl is taken and they do traditional cleansing, but the evidence is taken to police, it's well preserved, and then it is taken to the Directorate of Public Prosecution, and prosecution happens. So the chain of evidence collection and preservation remains very critical in our scenario, mostly in our communities. And so I call upon everyone to be a watchdog, to protect another woman, another girl. Be a whistleblower. In case you see something happen, please talk about it. Please report. There are nearest police stations where you can report. There are lines you can report to, and different officers can really support.
And of course, they say when you report to police, 1 day, 2 weeks, and the file sometimes is gone. You can't find it, so that's such scenario.
You can't rule out the issue of corruption, missing files, and all that. Yeah. So those are scenarios that are happening in this country. But what can we do about this to support someone get justice? For me, that is a bigger issue. And usually what we do is that we work with a victim. First of all, you first have to treat her psychologically so that they're confident. People have lost trust in our system. But when you work with the person, slowly you work with the existing structures, you can deliver justice to this person. Yeah. So I believe, I'm very optimistic that change can happen among communities by reporting, stigmatizing the perpetrators. Because for instance, the Sexual Offences Bill provides for a register of perpetrators. So if you realize that your name has been put in that register, you will also be stigmatized. So they'll call you a pedophile, they'll call you a rapist and all that.
The good thing is also addresses people who refuse these victims to go and report at PCI. That is a really good thing.
So I think let's look positively about the whole outlook for protecting women and girls, addressing issues of rape and defilement, because in other countries like DRC Congo, rape has been used as a tool of war. And this affects the region. Yeah? does not only affect Uganda, but the women across the globe. So we still advocate for implementation of these good progressive legal frameworks. There are quite many, but I think this one looks at the critical issues that were left out in the other frameworks. Yeah.
Thank you, Titi, for your time. And of course, I know if you've been viewing, if you've been watching this since we started, I think you've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from me. And of course, if you have so many questions, of course, you can still ask. She's always online. I don't know if you could give us the online platform that you use, but she's always online. She's always
on Twitter.
And even on Facebook you can find, but at least we've learned what the sexual offense bill is all about and its objective, its purpose. And of course, it is to fill these gaps that we are missing in the existing laws and see that these victims are helped, they find justice. That is what this bill is all about. And of course, for now, I say thank you for watching. See you next time.
Okay. Thank you.